people don't like change. I mean, that's for sure. You're totally right. I think the love for what you do, if you do an improvement, just look at the 4 values. And are you within the 4 values? If so, then you know you're innovating forward, not innovating backward.
Let's talk a bit about the principles, 12 principles.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite for you? Welcome to the world of agility. We're very excited today to have with us one of the maestros of the Agile Manifesto, Arie van Bennekum. Welcome, Arie. It's our pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Rola.
Welcome to the Infosysta podcast. And we're going to delve into your mind, if you don't mind. May I say that since your early years, whether it be in healthcare or the armed forces, up until today, you are simply known as a pragmatist. You are structured, you are focused, and you are practical. And for the past maybe 20 plus years, you have been driven by your passion for advocating and implementing the principles of the Agile Manifesto, which have redefined the way we work and thrive in today's fast-paced modern business world. We want to know how an expert in Agile methodology and transformations thinks. Are you ready to take us on a trip inside your mind?
I am.
Let's go. Okay, I would like you to close your eyes for a few seconds, please. Take us back to the year 2001, specifically to February 12th, to Salt Lake City at the Lightweight Methods Conference. What's the first image that comes to your mind?
The first image that comes through my mind is actually from a couple of days before. I live in the countryside in the Netherlands, so you come home from the highway and it's like, you know, the meadows and the cows, and it's like, I remember even the time, Thursday, 6:20, and I get a call from the UK asking, hey, Arie, can you go Saturday morning to Salt Lake City and represent us on a conference? So I was very active in a community, and that community was working in chapters across Europe especially, but they were working on a chapter in North America. The gentleman who was supposed to become the chapter of that new North American was friends with one of the other authors of the Agile Manifesto. He heard about that this session would happen, and he said, you know, we need to get those people from Europe in. And then the community was called the DSDM Consortium. Mary Hansen, who was running the back office, she gave me a call and she said, Arie, can you make it? And I think that's the reason I bring that forward is because, you know, when you talk about changing the world, I think the answer is yes. You should say yes to things to be able to make a difference. And I mean, no is easily said, right? And then you go back to
of course
business as usual. And I said yes. And you know, I remember I said to her, you know, give me a moment because okay, I'm in 5 minutes home, and then I will call you back in 10. That's how I am.
So you were 17 of the best software programmers brought together in a ski lodge in Salt Lake City, where it all began, and you were asked to do one thing: to find a way to improve the traditional ways of working. What happened during those 3 days?
Yeah, so you have to remember, you had traditional ways of working. We call it the waterfall. That's the most used phrase. And all of us were already in the 90s working in a different way, trying to overcome the problems that are embedded in that waterfall way of working. I started working differently in 1994. I know somebody else started working differently in 1998.
So you were all aware of the problems, they existed.
Yeah, and we all had our own angle, not exactly the same because of multiple problems. So one of the things that we did the moment that we started was, okay, so you work differently. Just tell the rest how you work. So we started explaining to each other, okay, this is how I work. That's where we started. And then the next step was, okay, what do we share? Because we work in the way we work and we're happy with that. But what are the things that we share?
What do you have in common? Because you were 17 apparently brilliant people in the IT field, and you were brought together in one place to write one publication. How difficult was that, knowing that you are 17 different people? Were there 17 different perspectives, or did you have things in common?
Well, sometimes when I'm doing master classes or so, I always ask in the room, you know, what happens if you put 17 men in a room?
Just read to work together, because it's a very competitive field, I believe.
Well, that's the point. So I asked them.
You have to put that aside, I think.
Yeah, that's the point. You need to put it aside. And I make the joke, you know, what happens if you put 17 men in a room and then the ladies that are in the room will say nothing, you know. But it's easy to get into the competition modus and to try to explain that what you do is better than the others. And John Kern, who is one of the other authors of the Agile Manifesto, had a brilliant phrase. He said, "We left our egos at the door." And I think that's where the strength comes from. Yeah.
I think that's key. That's one of the foundations of the manifesto.
Yeah, and I
put
think
ego aside and teamwork, work together.
Yeah, and I think in general, not just the manifesto, but even the whole world, it's community driven. It's sharing your best practices. Basically, that's what we did. And then we tried to give it a name. So the word Agile came, and then we zoomed in and the values came. And I remember that we finalized the principles over a flood of emails in the weeks after. Yeah.
What was the key motivation behind the creation of the Agile Manifesto?
But it's about making a point. And I remember, you know, I started working differently in 1994. And in the second half of the 90s, but even today, people will say things like, "Oh, that's a brilliant idea, but it doesn't work for us." And then did you ever try? No, but it doesn't work for us. And I think the strength in that room at that time was, we listen, and you have your best practices, you have your learnings, maybe I can do something with it as well. And I think that's a general attitude towards life that you should have. It's often missed, especially in the Agile world these days, but that's what we were doing there, and I think this is where the power comes from, yeah.
Do any of the discussions or the debates that took place between you men, brilliant men, I must say, any of them stay with you?
Yeah, I have a couple of statements that are still on my brain, and I remember maybe the most important one, but it reflects back on what I just said, was that, you know, people would ask questions, but you have two ways of asking, eh? Question one is, I ask somebody something because I try to debate. It's not really a question, but it's an opinion against what you said. And the other one is the question for clarification, you know, trying to understand. And I think that was the most important one. And I am still in contact with some of the authors of the Agile Manifesto, not all of them. I mean, I'm the only one that's not in the United States, so obviously they have an easier way to meet. But for me, I have a couple of people that I every now and then meet and speak. And for those who meet, I still feel that, you know, it has never changed. That's a funny thing.
You know you've accomplished something great together when you meet, without having to speak it.
You know, for me, on one side, I know that something came out of that manifesto worldwide. I don't feel I accomplished something as such. It's just the way I do it feels natural. And I'm very happy to share it with anyone who would like to take the benefits from it. That's how I feel it. The world is more open to it. That's great.
After those 3 days when you left this conference, did you leave, and I'm talking about you personally, did you leave feeling that you had accomplished something great?
No.
Did you know that you were going to change the world of business and how we do business from now on? Did it settle in right away?
Yeah, I understand your question, and I get similar questions more often, but you have to just picture this, right? I'm working in the Netherlands and in Europe at the moment in time. I am doing my thing. I am very often project manager, running those projects in this way. And before we didn't call it Agile, obviously.
So you were already implementing these methods in your personal way of doing business?
Yeah, I did since 1994, okay. Yeah. I got a comment because I was active in the community, as I mentioned earlier. And I was also chairing the community. And I was just divorced because the weekend that we wrote the manifesto was also the kickoff for my divorce. In hindsight, I didn't know, but my wife, ex-wife at the now, I made the plans during that weekend. And I had that meeting, it was always in the evening, back home because I had my children over, right? So the boys were in bed and the board of the ESDM consortium was sitting downstairs. And one of the guys later told me that the first meeting, it was a couple of days after I returned from Salt Lake. And, hey, Arie, you've been to the United States? Yeah, what are we doing? Oh, you know, we wrote a manifesto. I said, and you opened the meeting? So, no, were we aware of that? No. And you have to imagine also that at that time, the internet was just this big, right? and it has exploded. I think it exploded in 2004, 5, 6, really.
Right, the
that it
digital
got traction.
revolution started.
And it went alongside with the incredible increasing pace of innovation.
So you were visionaries at the time, not knowing how fast the digital world would expand.
Yeah, there's two things. A visionary in the sense that, I made in 1994 a decision, I'm not going to work like this. And that my motivation was, I came out of a very traditional waterfall project for the government, and that project after 7 months with 30 people full-time working was just...
Or at least you knew you could no longer continue with the standard traditional working methods.
Yeah, I made a decision. I don't want to be responsible or even co-responsible for wasting public money. That was my motivation. In hindsight, if you look now, we talk about responding to change over following a plan. That was, they said, this is the late 90s, the pace of innovation is so high. If you look today, the pace of innovation is insane. And it's not just technology, it's also geographical. We had the pandemic that had a massive impact on how we work, how we approved. Were we visionary? I think we were doing the good thing, and at the same time, looking now at it, this way of working is ready for the here and now. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the background of the participants. You were the only non-American.
Yeah.
There were 16 Americans, and there was Arie from the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And you were one of the youngest, I believe,
Yeah,
participants.
I was 37 at the time.
Did that work for you or against you at the time?
I didn't even realize this. Most of the people were, I think, late 40s, early 50s at the time.
You were in your mid-30s, I think?
Yeah, I was 37. Alistair Coburn is about my age. Mike Beadle was about my age. He passed away sadly a couple of years ago. But most of them, are now guys in their mid or late 70s. Most of them, not all of them. Did it work in my advantage? I don't even know. Actually, I was just there, in my opinion, doing what they did. I found a different way of working, not just me, but also within the community that I was representing.
The Agile Manifesto, which is interesting, was born in an atmosphere of love. It was Valentine's Day, 12, 13, 14. So on the 14th, this amazing work of love was born. Can you say that? It was a work of love for each of you?
Yeah, love for...
Love for what?
I think the love for what you do. My brother always says, Arie is a man on a mission, right? And whenever I do any kind of project, I want to deliver. I want to make sure that I deliver value for money. And I don't care if it's a private organization, a profit, a not-for-profit. I don't care. If you hire me, and I've been always a consultant all my life, so they hire you, and at the moment that I walk out of the door, I want to make sure that I deliver value for money every single day. And that has been my drive ever, and I think for the other ones as well. But if one of the other authors of the Agile Manifesto is James Grenning, and if you ask James, hey, what do you do for a living? He will say, I'm a software engineer with a passion for quality. And that was his passion, or is his passion, right? And this is mine.
Do you think there would have been the same amount of input if the driving force was not passion? Because that's what's driven you for the past 20 plus years.
No, I think passion is the decisive factor.
Let's delve into the core principles and values of the Agile Manifesto. How do you think they can guide a team or an organization in their approach to work? If you want to simplify it. In language that I would understand.
Yeah, if you read them, the 4 values top to bottom, you can just apply one after the other. And one of the things that we do in Agile is that you try to create a cycle of continuous improvement, right? What you see very often in organizations, especially in those days, they would have a quality management system or a quality management manual or whatever. And that would describe exactly, this is how we do every single day. This is the product, this is the template.
Theoretically.
Yeah, and then, of course, it wouldn't work, and it would maybe work for a big project, but not for a small project. But you were still, it was mandatory to do it also with small project. That kind of thing was always the big struggle. And if you can get around that, that's, I think, one of the main objectives. And looking at what Agile is. Agile is not a framework, it's not a methodology, it's a concept with a lot of frameworks in there. The frameworks have practices. So you go to that world of continuous improvement, and that means that you cannot write down exactly how to work, because you and I do work, and then we do a retrospective at the end of the sprint, and we identified, oh, we could do this better, and we go to that framework, we take that practice, and from the next sprint on, we do that as well. And then we have a different way of working, so that is something that is very different, and that's the big mindset. And if you do an improvement, I always say to my clients and the teams and the leadership teams, if you do an improvement, just look at the 4 values, and are you within the 4 values? If so, then you know you're innovating forward, not innovating backward.
I want to clarify one point here, Arie. We are not, as far as the values are concerned, we're not replacing an old set of values with a new set, right?
Yeah, I think even that...
They're both important. I think they complete each other.
I think values in general are good to have. I think the old way of working was not even based on values, it's just prescriptive. This is how we do it. Where the values help you is they give you the conceptual, core that you can use, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Doesn't say that we don't use processes and tools, but, the people, that's the most important, and the way they interact. How you do that, hey, that's up to you, that's fine, right? And I think that is what a value brings. It doesn't prescribe you how to do it. It gives you, a dot on the horizon.
You and I both know that by nature, people don't like change. They don't embrace it well. Tell me a little bit about the challenges you faced implementing the values and the principles of the Agile Manifesto, especially at the beginning.
The people don't like change. I mean, that's for sure. You're totally right. And there are multiple reasons for this. Especially if you look at people, they feel secure where they are now.
Of course, fear.
Yeah, people prefer the pain they know over the change that is about to come. And that's a weird one, right? But it's the way it is. And it means that you have to take people on a journey step by step. And you have the things that they do, which is the top layer, and let's call it doing Agile, but to make that really work in, making sure that you cut out the delays and that you're able to deliver faster, valuable solutions and products to the market. If you then say, okay, how can we look at those values and how can they make it work for us? That is, for me, how they should guide. And especially because you don't do big bang change, at least I don't. You allow people.
Is it a slow process?
Not necessarily, right? It's not necessarily that you do it very slow, but you cannot. The point is, you can force people to do things completely different, at 3 o'clock.
Or you could win their trust, which is, I think,
and build a process
approach.
to get there. Yeah. And I think that is a very important one because people like change, like you just said, what will happen is that if you go too fast, the resistance will be massive.
Of course.
And if you take smaller steps and you have people with them, the Agile coaches.
You're building a trust system here.
Yeah, you show the success stories, you build the trust, they feel safe, they have a backup if things go wrong. You need to make sure that the management is aligned because people are afraid to make mistakes as well, especially in change. But then you can make that process going. Yeah.
Arie, let's talk a bit about the principles, 12 principles.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite for you?
Yeah. And the one that I like the most is, that talks about, and trust people and create the environment for them to work in, right? I was working in 2001 for a company in the Netherlands that was called Solvision, and the Vision Web later on when it grew. And it was originated by 3 founders who were going into, how can we get as much self-organizing teams as possible? And we did everything in the teams. We had, at one moment in time, when I started working there with only 25 people, we had 3 teams. But at one moment in time, there were 25 teams and maybe 500 plus people. I don't know the exact number anymore. And they stuck to that principle of self-organizing and trust. And that created such a commitment in the organization. It was amazing. One of the things I always say about Agile is that, it's moving from an individual task to team delivery and in a shared responsibility. And that's what we did there. And I've seen it. It was, I could say it was magic. It was not, because it was just people collaborating in a brilliant way.
Because they share the responsibility, but they also share the reward at the end, the credit.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why maybe that one is my most favorite. And I see too often people not giving the empowerment, but I also see people not taking the empowerment. It's not easy, yeah.
I'm sure. One of the core values of the Agile Manifesto is to satisfy the client. Okay, customer satisfaction. What kind of client would be interested in this framework of business, and what kind of company would say, I am an agile organization?
Yeah, I think when it comes to what kind of client, I think we talked earlier about the high pace of change, right? And I think there is not one organization that should not apply a lot of agile practices, because you cannot afford the delay in the traditional ways of working anymore. It's very simple. So, and there is no excuse, because it has been done in every business in the world. So it can be done, it has been done. And
how can they refuse it when it's proven itself year after year, as far as time saving, efficiency, transparency, productivity?
Yeah, and I think it's going back to that one thing, change, also people protecting their position. So when you talk about what kind of company or organization, also not for profit, right? Annie?
What's the identity of an agile organization?
Yeah, people ask me when going to an agile transformation, when is it ready? Good question. Very good question.
Slowly but surely.
Again, you get into a way of working where continuous improvement is a fact. So you're never done improving. But the type of organization is where people are open, people listen to understand versus listen to criticize, and where people stick to their word. When you say yes, you do yes, right? And not no or not anything. Very often, this starts with the executive team. That's where it needs to start, because the role model of the when it comes to transparency, it's about trust, right? And there are organizations ruled by fear.
They have to practice what they preach.
And they also have to see and understand the absolute benefit. And the three founders of Solvision at the time, they got that. Yeah.
If you look at the Agile Manifesto's journey since its inception, what impact do you think it has had over the years on the software development industry?
Massive. And for every organization, it could be in a different way. But again, when we wrote the manifesto, I did not foresee this kind of impact, not at all. It was just, I represented the way I work. We talked about it. They talked about their way of working. I got my lessons learned from it. But in hindsight, I think most IT companies apply some sort of agile. When you have organizations that have another core business, but they have an IT department or maybe a specific IT company, there will be agile as well. Now you can talk about, okay, what is the level of agile? There is always room for improvement. But from my perspective, I've been talking about agile in Japan and in Korea and in South Africa and in Finland and in Argentina and in Brazil and all those countries in between. And I've not been in all the countries in the world, but I've been on every continent except Antarctica, right?
Do you think the culture plays a role in how quickly they receive this new method?
Yeah.
With your extensive experience in Agile, the Agile concept and transformations and methods, and as a global public speaker, with your rich experience in lecturing at several of the most prominent and prestigious universities, I think several decades of teaching, do you think that we can apply the Agile concept or manifesto in the education system?
Actually, it has been done already.
Okay,
yeah. And it's a pity because there was, I think it was a Dutch innovation to apply Agile principles in education at primary school. And they were actually doing it, but it has, you read on the media or LinkedIn or whatever, you read about it, and it has become silent. And I don't know why, to be honest. But on one hand, you can apply Agile in every professional domain, any professional domain that you choose. I bumped into a lot of issues in the academic world, and I think there can be a lot improved by applying Agile principles, absolutely. Yeah.
So, in your opinion, the Agile concept can be applied in any field?
Yeah. And again, right, you have the concept has quite a few frameworks. I think there may be easy 17 or 18 formal recognized Agile
So it's just
frameworks.
choosing the right framework which works best for you.
Yeah, or a mix of practices I always use a mix. I think if you look at the word framework, when I do Agile transformations or Agile deliveries, I use practices from at least 5 or 6 different frameworks. So, it's just finding your way. What will help you start, then get in your continuous improvement modus, then start applying more and more and get in. And that's where you get your successes and your benefits.
I heard that Infosysta was working on something related to Agile for lawyers.
Well, honestly, I know that they do, but that's about it. But for me, it is exactly what I said before. In the legal world, there can be a lot of pressure when lawsuits are coming or whatever is happening. And Agile principles will help you out to give the overview of the whole process, to cut out delays where you think they are. Don't wait on people when you have dependencies, identifying them. Work as one team if the egos allow it, and work in a shared responsibility. And then you can move forward. I'm totally convinced. I've not done it as such, especially in the legal world, delivering legal practices with lawyers. I can't see any reason why not. No.
Let's go back to 2001, when the Agile Manifesto was created. If you can go back in time now, and I'm a magician, and I give you a magic wand, think, what would you change?
When it comes to the manifesto specifically, what I would change is take out the word software and replace it by a product or service or something like this, because software on its own doesn't do much. It's always, I like to use the expression full delivery. It's all the disciplines together to make a product or a service generating the value for an organization that you hope for, right? And that means that all the disciplines have to work on that same delivery, whether it's the software development, but maybe also the legal department and the marketing department and the security department and whatever it is. And you have to bring them together. That's my idea.
Arie, I'm sure you know, worldwide, there is a fear today that AI will soon take over or replace humans in the business world.
Yeah.
Whereas the Agile Manifesto emphasizes the importance of the people behind the processes, meaning that no matter how brilliant or good the tools are, in the wrong hands, they're worthless. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right?
True.
So that's the number one. We should be ready for change, as we always should have been. But if you go back to the industrial revolutions, machines will take over, the jobs of people, and then robots will take over the jobs of people. The computers will take over the jobs of people.
It never happened.
Well, not completely. There's always the human brain is always needed there. At the same time, where we are today, the type of jobs that we have in the current world, most likely 95% of the jobs didn't exist 100 years ago, especially not in the way that you do them today. So, and that just emphasizes change is there. Change will always go on, and you have to be ready for it. What AI specifically will bring, I get more questions about this. I have people asking me about it. I don't know. In the current situation, I can say that AI will help you to really, look and diagnose on the current. So we're in a situation what can we do to make today better, with new products or solutions or whatever. And what I think AI will also bring is, predict behavior for the future. And that's where organizations can benefit from. What it will bring further in the future, AI is a new domain. We don't know. We always know that in the beginning, when a new domain is starting up, the pace of change is insane. And I think it will happen there as well. So where it will be 2 years from now, I don't know.
Arie, with the ever-changing landscape of technology and business, how has the concept of agility changed throughout the years?
If you look back at Agile, in the 90s, we started working differently, remember? And we were talking about tooling and stuff, and it was all so small and a struggle to get it working. I always say when you do work in business, delivery work, whether it's software development or something else, you have basically three things that build on each other. You have, on one hand, tools that help you, let's say, giving you insights on how your process is running. The second one is tools that help you to build that solution, to create the value for the organization. And you have your way of working, Agile. Right? And for example, at Infosysta, they're very good at Jira, platinum partner there. That's one of the tools that helps you to have a good insight on how the process is going in your organization. And I think this is where the tools have been more and more helpful. Did it really change the landscape? I think AI, we talked about it, that will be a game changer.
Of course.
Maybe already is in Agile. But those tools, like the one that Infosysta provides, are so helpful in knowing where you are. And another thing is, we talk about data and big data. And, the thing on data is it gives you a better insight. It's not about what we think, but we can see in the data what it really is, how important this is for the organization.
Or maybe predict also.
Yeah, and then you can have a better creation of value, because your data will tell you what's going on and what you need in the business, right? And then tools like Infosysta uses it, they will give you a better insight on what's going on in your process and how you can improve there. Still, in the Agile way of working, the human is the center of everything that happens, human being.
I think we're going to leave the topic of AI to future podcasts. Arie, I really enjoyed our conversation together. I came into this interview with a lot of curiosity, and I think just like everyone watching, each one of us can get something out of it, perhaps at least to be able to open our mind to being much more agile in many aspects of our lives. Thank you so much for your insight, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you so much.